And he talks about, well, where is this coming? For things have been going on the same way ever since the beginning. I'm paraphrasing just slightly. So he asks that, well, things have been going on the way they have been since the beginning. Well, things have not really been going on the way since the beginning of creation, because things changed. The flood, as we say, is a game changer. Many things changed. Man went from being a vegetarian to now being given everything to eat. And you know how I feel about pork. But we're not going to go into that because that'd be too long of a conversation. But we find that as we went through, and if you look at Genesis 1 through 12, as I hold that up, Genesis 1 through 12 covers 2,000 years of history. Because Abraham is born right around that 2,000-year mark from creation, if you follow the genealogies. That's a lot of history. But there's a lot in there to grasp, not only in creation. As I look out, I see that there are some parents here who have children in school. Are your children being taught the Genesis account of creation and the flood? If they are being taught, they are being homeschooled. But it's not being taught in the public schools, and hasn't for some time. We came up to Genesis chapter, briefly, Genesis 1 is a creation, Genesis 2 talks about the roles of men and of Adam and Eve, and then quickly moves into chapter 3, which talks about, we have the, I'll get into chapter 4, which talks about Cain and Abel. Chapter 5 talks of the genealogies of those first 10 generations up to Noah. As you might have noticed, people lived a long time. Now, these aren't necessarily the oldest of the children. When it says that, obviously, when Adam fathered Seth, Seth was not the oldest. He had 2 older brothers. So we aren't guaranteed that each of these people that are listed in Genesis chapter 5 are the oldest child there. They could have been, might have been the youngest. We don't know. But they are given to us because they are part of the genealogy. And how many of you, when you get to Matthew, and read the genealogy, and Luke, the genealogy, that you pour over every single name there? Don't raise your hands all at once. Because the genealogy that we find in those 2 Gospels, one takes the direction through the kingly and the other through the lineage back to Adam. But they are given, and we find that when we come back to Adam, that those same names are given to us here. And it's important to note that, as Luke tells it, because those who were of the Greek and Roman lineage wanted to know who was their God. Who was the God of the Greeks? Was it Jupiter or was it Zeus? I always get them mixed up. Zeus? Okay. Well, they want to know who the creator is. Well, they go all the way back to Adam, who is the Son of God. Then we come to chapter 6, and we've gone through these. Chapter 6, when it talks about when man began to multiply in the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw the daughters of men were attractive. Then we continue on down. In verse 5, the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And God must do something about this. Why is it that God did not just completely destroy the world, the earth, and start another earth devoid of a flood? Devoid. Without a flood. Just completely destroyed the earth and formed a new earth. He made a promise. He made a promise in Genesis 3:15 that the seed of the woman. Very important to keep this in mind in that. So we see that the wickedness, and then he finds in verse 8, but Noah found favor. How many of your verses say Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord? Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And it tells the generation of the flood. Now, verse 11, now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and the earth was filled with violence, and God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make the end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them with the earth. Make yourself an ark of gopher wood, make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark is 300 cubits, its breadth is 50 cubits, and its height is 30 cubits. And then he gives further instructions. We come down to chapter 7. Then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that your righteousness before me in this generation. Take with you 7 pairs of all clean animals, male and his mate, and a pair of the animals that are not clean, the male and his mate. 7 pairs of birds of the heaven, also male and female, to keep the offspring alive on the face of the earth. For in 7 days I will send rain on the earth, 40 days and 40 nights. Every living thing that I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground. And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded. Now Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters came upon the earth, and Noah and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives went with him into the ark to escape the waters of the flood. Of the clean animals and of the animals that are not clean, and the birds and of everything that creeps on the ground, two, male and female, went into the ark with Noah, as God had commanded Noah. And after 7 days the waters of the flood came upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened, and rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights.
Look how many times he uses day. It didn't change the meaning of day.
No, it didn't.
From
It's
the first chapter.
no, it's still the same word, yam, in that.
Date
Mhm.
for days.
Mm-hmm.
17.
17th day of the month, in the 2nd month. And rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife and the 3 wives and his sons of them entered the ark. They and every beast according to its kind, and all the livestock according to their kinds, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, in which there was the breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all the flesh, went in as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. Why is it, you think, in the New Testament that the flood is mentioned so many times? As a reminder, Jesus, when he tells of what the last day is going to be like, or the end of Jerusalem in that case, when he tells about it, he says it'll be just like as in the days of Noah. They'll be marrying and giving in marriage, and they'll be unaware until that day came. Now, Noah is called a preacher of righteousness in the New Testament.
In my version, in the sixth chapter, he says, you alone I have seen to be righteous before me in this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Noah found favor. And we don't know. And some of the things that we look at and we think, well, it took Noah 120 years to build the ark. How many says that you're going to build an ark, and he was told when to go into the ark? Was it 60 years? Was it 100 years? We don't know. Did Noah alone build the ark? Doesn't say that Noah. Did Solomon build the temple? No. Solomon was the one who was in charge of it, but when it said that Solomon built the temple, they're not saying that Solomon himself alone built the temple. We don't know how many people helped.
I thought the sons helped Noah.
It could be, but it's simply the fact that he was given the task. How many people that he oversaw, we don't know. And I only say that because how many of you have been questioned about your belief in Noah's Ark?
We can speculate because the sons helped, and probably nobody else unless that Lord sent down angels to help him, because nobody else got on that ark. And if somebody is going to come along and help build the ark, you would think that Noah
That's an interesting concept, but we aren't told how many people helped. You,
Somebody enough, they might have helped anyway.
yeah. How many of you have been to the Ark in Williamsburg, Kentucky? Now, they will tell you, if you've been there, that people who are atheists helped. How do they know that? Because they could see the bumper stickers on the back of their car, which indicated. But who knows? I don't know if it was a union job. Nothing against unions. I'm not speaking against unions. Okay? Please don't persecute me. But I'm just saying, if the pay was good and they were willing to be paid, they worked on the project.
Just because they worked on the ark doesn't necessarily mean that they believed in what they were doing. And just because people go to church doesn't necessarily mean that they believe what is being said. And just because of all these things about religion that are happening in the world today, doesn't necessarily believe that these people are godly or righteous. God knows the hearts. He said the very same thing in Matthew 7 when he was teaching them that narrow is the way. These people were thinking that, all I have to do is be good, be helpful, and all that. But it's really the matter of your faith to get to the point of God's message. And many of them were probably going through the motions. I'm not really sure, but I need some money for my kids, my family, to make this art. I'll do it. Where the heart is what it's all about.
We tend to think that they did not have the knowledge back then, that they didn't know how to do things. And I might point out something called the pyramids. Not only in Egypt, but in Mexico and South America, they certainly had the know-how to do it. So we don't want to cut them short and say, well, they would have needed X amount of workers. We may need that amount of workers today, but those are things that sort of lead us far away. Personally, we aren't told that the angels helped them. I think that this was a human endeavor, because nothing else gives us the information on that, although one would lead to that in their own mind of thinking, but it wouldn't necessarily be the truth.
There's no way Frank Lloyd Wright personally built every house he's only needed to.
Yeah, yeah,
He got the credit.
yeah, he did get the credit.
And it took 100 years, right?
We don't know. We are told that in 120 years will be the end. But we aren't told specifically that he started the day that God told him. Whenever he started, he started. And that tends to be a lesser point, that we shouldn't get caught up in that, in trying to say it was exactly 100 years or exactly 120. The fact is that Noah did everything that God told him, however long it took. Whoever he had to use to employ to get it done, it was done.
It didn't happen overnight.
At least a week.
I was going to say, the text never indicates even that Noah's sons were believers or their daughters. Just because his work saved them does not indicate they themselves were faithful people. It's always Noah was a righteous man. Noah found favor with God. Noah prepared the ark.
Mm-hmm.
The emphasis is always on him. It's never on anybody in his family.
Yeah, Hebrews 11 says, by faith, Noah, when warned. So it's the conversations that surround Noah's Ark many times go into areas of speculation. And well, there's nobody that loves to speculate more than me, but realizes the danger of speculation. Because people will come up with the hard questions for us. Well, how could God have put all of those animals into the ark? How could he have fit them into the ark? Because we assume that there are as many species today, minus a few, that there were in that day. However God did it, it was God that led the animals there. 2 by 2 for the unclean and 7 pair of the clean. Did I say that right? Unclean and clean. Yeah. So they showed up. And it's been pointed out that animals have a terrific sense of direction, whether that's used because we see how they migrate. But the fact is that Noah obeyed. Now we have the opening up of the heavens for 40 days and 40 nights. Opening up not only the heavens, but the springs of the sea. And it covered the earth. How tall? We talked about this last. How tall was the tallest mountain in the days of Noah? We don't know. All we know is that we're not even assured that Mount Ararat existed before, but we are told that it was named Mount Ararat. But many times those things are named by Moses in the beginning of Genesis that they would have been familiar with afterwards as they were reading that history. So we don't know how tall the tallest mountain was, but we are told that it was how high above the tallest? It was 15 cubits beyond it, and that typically, as ships are built, half of the ship is going to be below waterline. And if the ship is 15 or 30 cubits high, then it would have been 15 cubits below that, and the water went 15 cubits above the tallest mountain. Shipbuilders would know that. Now, we have also talked about the fact that Noah was an amateur shipbuilder. We didn't say that, but that's what the world sees. Was Noah a shipbuilder? Are we told that there had never been a ship built before? No. We speculate that. Had it ever rained on the earth before? Well, we don't know that. We are told in the beginning that the mist came up, but we are not told that it specifically had not rained. So it's one of those issues.
I just bring up a point. The ark is never called a ship. A ship is for steering around. The word ark in Hebrew means it's a box. That's all it is. In fact, even the one in Kentucky has a bow on it, like it needs to go somewhere. It just needed to float. And a box is the easiest thing to make to float.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's
that would give extra room for putting the animals in, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
it was just a big square.
Yeah, and the same word that's used for ark here is the one that is used for Moses as well. The basket for Moses, it's also the same word in that. So there's many things that are left unanswered, but there's enough that is answered for us that by faith we can believe that this was a flood of worldwide proportions, because it says every mountain. When it says every mountain, how many mountains were not covered? None. Every mountain was covered. Every mountain was covered. And so that takes away the possibility that it was a local flood. So we end up having to put out a lot of little brush fires, as we call them, of trying to answer questions of people. Well, it could only have been a local flood because the water certainly couldn't have been high enough to go over Mount Everest. Well, was Mount Everest in existence in the flood? No. We speculate that it wasn't. But we don't know what the world looked like in that, is the point. But we are told that Noah did everything that he was commanded to do. So it continues in verse 17. The flood continued 40 days on the earth. The waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters prevailed and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. The waters prevailed over the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep, and all flesh died that moved on the earth. Birds, livestock, beasts, all the swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land in whose nostrils was the breath of life. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, man and animals and creeping things and birds of the heavens, that they were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those who were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed on the earth 150 days. 150 days. Okay? That seems pretty straightforward. Now, when we get to the end, we're going to read about the covenant that God made, that never again would He destroy the world by flood. And one of the questions that people will ask us, well, there are still floods today. In fact, have you been watching the floods in North Carolina? Have you been watching the floods overseas? In Tennessee, yes. Are those worldwide floods? No, they are not worldwide floods. But God said that the next time He's going to destroy the world, what is He going to do? What have we read? By fire. Does anybody know how He's going to do that? Has God told us how He's going to do that? Edit that one out. Wes, I don't know where that one's going to start. But He says by next time it's going to be fire. But He says never again. And He assured us by doing what? Putting the rainbow. Had there ever been a rainbow in the world before? We don't know if there had ever been a rainbow before. So we have a lot of things that we make assumptions on, but what does the text tell us that we need to remember? So as we continue on down, and I don't want to skip over a lot of the things, because we have talked about those, but we continue on down to chapter 8. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. The rain from the heavens was restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the waters had abated. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window in the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven. And it went to and fro until the waters had dried up from the earth. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth a dove, and she did not return to him anymore. In the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried off the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. In the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, "Go out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth went out by families from the ark. Another question we have is, where did all the water go? Does it tell us where all the water went? No.
Does it say that the heavens were closed and that the flood waters of the deep were closed in again?
From those scientists that are creationists, and I will take them at their word because they certainly have a little bit more education than me, but they say that the earth in Noah's day was one continent. And you can see that across all the continents, you can see that the certain layers and strata are the same, whether you're in Africa, North America, Asia, Europe, South America. Who have I left out? Antarctica. You can see the strata that is there. And I mentioned the movie documentary, Is Genesis History? Does a wonderful job with the PhDs that explain things such as that. But how did God do it? How many of you have a list of questions you've made when you get to heaven you want to ask? How many of those questions you think are going to get answered? And they'll say, those with questions in this line, those without questions in this line. I don't mean to.
Without any questions, it's going to be a lot shorter line.
Yeah. But we told that He caused a great wind. We don't know how God did it, but we know that He did it. We are going to trust by faith that all of this came about here. and it was in the mountains of Ararat. I have seen many, many programs that people who know exactly where the ark is, and they have the proof. They can show you exactly where it's at. I'm suspicious. Well, I'm just suspicious because I'll leave it at that. I'm not sure that they've actually found it.
Matthew, how do you access that movie, this Genesis history?
If you go to YouTube and just type in "is Genesis history," I've sent out emails with the link to it.
Yeah, I know you told us that.
Mhm.
I haven't gotten that far down on my reading.
But you
Okay,
can,
I'm sorry.
but you can look at it and just click on the, just type that in there, and you can find it. It's free. It used to cost something. I bought it when it cost money, but it is very good. They are human beings, but they are people of faith who are scientists. And some of you have seen it. I've seen it several times. I enjoy watching it. It is over my head because everybody that he interviews has a PhD. But they are people of faith and can explain that this is a young earth. This world is 6,000, perhaps 7,000 years old. Not millions, not billions of years old. And that the flood is a relatively recent occurrence in our history. It's called "Is Genesis History?" And I've sent out emails with the link on it. You can find that. It is a very good. It's less than 2 hours long, and from that have spawned several interviews with people who are from that movie and others who go into greater detail. The documentary is really sort of a shortened version, and if you can imagine, in 10 minutes you could explain how light got here so fast. Now, if they can do that in 10 minutes, they did a pretty good job. They did a good job of opening up the door and explaining it is possible. But they also talk about the Tower of Babel, which we'll get to in a little bit. So now we've come down to verse 20 of Genesis chapter 8. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. And God blessed Noah and his sons, beginning in chapter 9. Be fruitful.
It's kind of hard to imagine God smelling the aroma.
Yes, God smelling, he mentioned, it's hard to imagine God smelling the aroma. But over and over, it will, especially if you go into the law and you read about it, it's a sweet-smelling aroma.
Right.
With the earth and everything going to, fall apart in 12 years, this might be a little bit of hope for the kids to have this verse. As long as the earth remains, we'll be able to grow food and
Mhm.
not to worry. And so I did send that to somebody that was kind of offended by it.
Yeah.
Thought I was going against climate change.
Yeah. And you're speaking of the 12 years of which they warned us that it's been several years since they warned that the world was going to end in 12 years. Yeah.
I mean, they did that back in the 70s. I
Mhm.
mean, we have to repeat it now and then because it doesn't ever come true.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you just have to keep sort of pushing it forward. And those that believe that the world is going to be covered up with water because of climate change, yes, we simply need to direct them back to this, in which God said, I'm never going to do it again. But more important than that, when it's referred to in the New Testament, talking about the Noah, it's really many times referring to the end time. And it's really the warning that just as in those days, when Noah was building the ark, that people were going about their regular business. And that is the way that the world is. And our responsibility is to take the gospel out while there is yet time. Did Noah turn his sons loose to build the ark while he stood on a pedestal and preached to the people? Does the Bible say that? No. But it says that Noah was a preacher of righteousness. To what extent did he warn them about the end of the world? We're not explicitly told. But I can imagine that if people asked him, he was more than willing to say, God said he's going to destroy the world. Yeah. Yeah, and that's where our minds go. Certainly, if I walk by a project like that, those of you who know me would know that I would stop and ask every question that my mind could come up with. Is what are you doing here? How long have you been working on this? That's how my mind works. And one would assume that human nature being what it is, that people would have asked. And Noah would have certainly given them that. But that's, again, we simply had that as speculation. Yeah, and what's a flood? All of those questions. And so he continues on into chapter 9. He says, and every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. As I gave you the green plants, I give you everything, that you shall not eat flesh with its life. That is, its blood. As for your lifeblood, I will require a reckoning from every beast, I will require it, and from man. From his fellow man I will require a reckoning for his life. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image. And you be fruitful and multiply, increase greatly on the earth. Now we come to one of the great parts here. As if these weren't great enough that we've already read. Verse 8, then God said to Noah and to his sons, behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you. As many as came out of the ark, it is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all the flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you, for all future generations. I've set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is set in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on earth. God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. Can that covenant be broken? No, there was no mechanism that was put in there by God said, if you do this, I will never destroy the earth by water again. He didn't say that. He said, I will never. Now, there are covenants within the Old Testament that could be broken. If you do this, then the covenant will be broken. Anybody name one of those? The Mosaic covenant. Okay? We're out of time here. You've rung the bell, haven't you? That's what that real loud buzzing is. Any questions or comments? We'll continue with the covenant, which is, we won't do it justice to talk about the covenant in its completeness today. Any questions or comments? All right, class is over.